Chapter 12. I ran across this story a couple weeks ago, and I just laughed when I read this, and I can't remember if I heard it or read it, and so I had to do some research and find out if it was actually true. And so I thought I want to be able to use that in a message, in a sermon sometime. And I think I can use it tonight to make the application. And so it's a fella by the name of Lawn Chair Larry. I don't know if you've ever heard of Lawn Chair Larry. And it's a true story. And so Lawn Chair Larry got his nickname because of something that he did on July the 2nd, 1982. Now, as I read different stories, and some of the stories are evangelistically speaking, is a term that I've heard for years, that meaning it was exaggerated some. And so I read multiple stories, because I did some research, and you just type in, is Lawn Chair Larry a legitimate story? And sure enough, it was. It was from a fella that always had a desire, Larry Walters, always had a desire from the time he was 13 years of age with flying, just intrigued with flying, and thought to himself if it would be possible to get a bunch of balloons, even at a young age, and fly up into the air with these helium balloons. He was so intrigued with flying that he enlisted into the military for the purpose of trying to fly, but his eyesight wasn't good enough, and so he wasn't able to be approved to go into the military. And so as the different stories I read, that he would often see the different aircraft, that he'd gaze up from his backyard and dream, think of, the dream he wasn't able to fulfill. But on July the 2nd, 1982, he decided he was going to make his dream come true. So he had gone down to the Army-Navy surplus store, and he bought 45 weather balloons. And they were the big, once you get them inflated, about 7 to 8 feet a piece. And so he got 45 of these, and tied him to the put a lawn chair, put straps on the lawn chair, and tied it to the bumper of his Jeep, and started inflating all of these helium balloons. And so he had this plan, what he figured he would do, that he had this plan that he took a CB radio with him, and then he also packed a lunch that he took with him, took some snacks, and took a pellet gun. So he decided what he would do. He'd put all of these helium balloons, fill them all up, and then once he got up into the air so far, the only way he felt like he'd come down was to start popping all of these balloons, and then he could come down gradually. And so he started filling these things all up. One story, one take said that he actually cut the strap that was attached when he got all the balloons filled. He cut it. Another said that the strap broke prematurely, and so the idea was for him to ascend slowly. But whether he cut the strap for him to go into the sky or it just broke on its own, every story that I read said he didn't go up gradually. He shot up like he was shot out of a cannon, and said the next thing he knew was 15,000 feet in the air. So 15,000 feet into the air. And one story said he was up in the air for 14 hours, which I don't think was the case. A more legitimate story was he was in the air for 45 minutes. But everything that I could read, this is definitely true, that there were 2 Pan Am pilots. And this all happened in California. So at the LA airport, when I said happened in California, I saw somebody say, like, sure, that sounds like California people. And so literally 2 Pan Am pilots radioed in and said, we just spotted a guy up here in helium balloons in a lawn chair at 15,000 feet with a gun in his lap. And so they, again, one story said that they had to have a helicopter come in and put a drop line and tow him back to Earth. Another story said that he literally was able to pop the balloons and gradually descended and got stuck into some power lines. And I thought it was interesting that he on his CB radio, he actually, with one group called React, I guess it's a CB group of people, and so he contacted them, and he says, what information, the guy coming back, this is a recorded conversation. So the guy with React says, what information do you wish me to tell the airport at this time as to your location and your difficulty? So Larry, lawn chair Larry, says, the difficulty is, as this was an unauthorized balloon launch, and I know that I'm in federal airspace, and I'm sure my ground crew has alerted the proper authority, but just go ahead and call them and tell them that I'm okay. So the guy with Iraq says, okay, be safe. Yeah, like, sure, you got 45 balloons, 15,000 feet in the air, be safe, good luck, we're for you. And so he got to the ground, he was arrested, and again, this is all a true story. I laughed when I heard that. It says he started going to Jay Leno and David Letterman show, and he became a celebrity in all of this. And so a few different phrases that jumped out at me that I thought was funny. They'd asked him why he had done it, and so he said, a man can't just sit around. And I said, oh, that's funny. So if your husband's getting bored, ladies, and you find him mind a bunch of balloons, you may want to ask him some questions. So a man can't just sit around. And he became a motivational speaker. And I guess in one of his statements, as he would speak to different people, he said, we cannot sit around any longer. We need to get out of our comfort zone and go make a difference in the lives of others. Now that's more of an intro and a bridge to what I wanted to give to you tonight. We got to get out of our comfort zone and go and make a difference in the lives of others. I guess we could say, as Christians, a Christian can't just sit around. Okay, we need to do something to help other people. In the past week or two, my heart has just been full with, and even more so on a day like today, my heart has just been filled just to hear of all the different stories of you all helping each other. Things that never get announced from the pulpit. Visits of some of you all that are going to other people's homes. Ways that, people going and mowing the yards of others and just being an assistant, going and sitting with people and visiting with people, buying things for different people just to let them know that they care. And I keep hearing all of these different stories, and I think what a blessing it is to know that we have people in our church who care about others, who never get their deed mentioned from the pulpit, but what they do just makes a difference. I got a phone call today from my sister, from both of my sisters, but one of my sisters especially. On a day like today, I often think about when when I talked to my sister Brenda. She was the one that was 11 years of age and wanted us to go to church for her 12th birthday. And because of her testimony, we all ended up getting saved and living for the Lord. Mom and Dad in heaven now because of a little 11-year-old's testimony. And so thankful for that. One of Brenda's, I say one, her life verse that she often quotes is in Jude in verse 22, and of some have compassion, making a difference. All of us make a difference in the life of somebody. Our deeds make a difference. Our acts of kindness make a difference. One quote says, "Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed that's all who ever have." Another quote that I like, it takes each of us to make a difference for all of us. That's true. It takes each of us to make a difference for all of us. Helen Keller, who was blind, said, "I'm only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I can't do everything, I will not refuse to do something that I can do." And I think that's should be a good reminder to all of us. We can't do everything, but we can do something. We can do some things, and those some things may make a big difference. A little bit of a humorous quote, but I think it applies. Anyone who thinks that they are too small to make a difference has never tried to fall asleep with a mosquito in the room. Oh man, I don't know how many nights, more so in the summers, do you try to get the fly that you know is in the room. You can hear it buzzing around, and you'll find out where it is. You can't always see it, but you're trying to hear the sound, and then you spot it and you shut the light off. So it'll land, and then you turn the light back on and go try to catch it, and hopefully you can outsmart it. But boy, it's been a few nights for most of us that it's disturbed because of one little thing that made a difference in our life. So yeah, all of us are important, and all of us make a difference in the life of somebody else. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and a familiar portion of Scripture. I wanted to quote Jude 22 to you, and of some have compassion, making a difference. But 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and before we read, let's pray together. Lord, thank you that we can come together again tonight, and I pray that you help all of us to be reminded of this little simple truth, how that all of us can make the difference in the life of somebody else. Help us to be reminded of this truth. Well, thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. 1 Corinthians 12, and look, if you would, beginning in verse 12. For as the body is one, and hath many members, and all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, we have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot shall say, because I am not the hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear shall say, because I am not the eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where were the hearing? If the whole were the hearing, where were the smelling? But now hath God set the members, every one of them, in the body, as it hath pleased him. I love that portion of Scripture in verse 18. Now they were all one member, where were the body? But now are they many members, yet one body. And the eye cannot say unto the hand, I have no need of thee, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. Nay, much more, those members of the body which seem to be more feeble are necessary. And that is so true. Every one of us are important, and every one of us are necessary. Just to give you a little bit of a quiz and to express this thought. How many of the wealthiest people in the world could you name tonight? We might be able to name a few. who they are. And, I didn't write any of them down, but my mind just went blank. But those that started Apple, and Tesla, so some of these people, you might remember them, but the truth is, if you were to be put in a position to name the 10 wealthiest people in the world, I doubt that there's anybody right off the top of your head tonight who could name maybe even 5 of the most wealthiest people in the world. Who won the Heisman Trophy last year? Anybody remember? Some of you are sports people might remember who won the Heisman Trophy. Who won the Super Bowl? Some of you who are fans maybe know who won the Super Bowl. Who recently just won the NBA Finals. And again, there are a few. Who's won the NBA Finals for the last 5 years? So we can ask some of these questions, and some of them that we could care less about. The Miss America contest, the Nobel Peace Prize, and the Academy Awards, and World Series, and all these different people. The truth is, all of these people that we think are just the greatest people in the world, who make the biggest influences on everybody's life, the truth is we don't very often remember who they are. But let me give you another thought. You may not be able to mention the wealthiest people in the world who won this award, who got that award, but I want you to think about, let's say, however many you want, but 3 people that you enjoy spending time with. Maybe 5 people that you enjoy spending time with. Do you have one person you enjoy spending time with? Some people become a recluse. It's like me, okay? That's who I enjoy spending time with, is me. And some would be very happy just with me time, I guess. And so think of the people that you enjoy spending time with. I wrote some of these down, actually. And in doing so, I have some people that are in every category. So those are really special people to you if their name is written down in every category. I wrote my family down that I really enjoy spending time with. And so think of people that you enjoy spending time with. Okay, name people who have taught you something worthwhile. So who would that be? Somebody that has taught you something worthwhile. So again, people that are in my second list, many of them are in my first list. A mom and a dad family, you look back, look at all the things your dad taught you. Look at all the things that your mom taught you. Look at all the things that sometimes kids teach you. Sometimes brothers and sisters will teach you things. And so friends and preachers. I put my grandpa in there. I remember being on a fishing bank one day, catching carp, and with Joshua in West Virginia, and an old fella come up, stood behind us for a little while, and then finally he just said to me, he says, "Young man, who taught you how to rig a line like that?" And had a little piece of dough ball on the end of our line so we could see the fish biting. And he said, who taught you how to rig a line like that? I said, my grandpa taught me that. And he said, I knew it had to be somebody like that because this generation couldn't have figured that out on their own. So yep, that's right. My grandpa taught me a lot of things. And I remember being on the riverbank with my grandpa and asking about the time he got saved. And we'd go hunt together and fish together. I always enjoyed just going and spending time with my grandpa. We used to rabbit hunt together, but the first time I went rabbit hunting with dogs was with my grandpa, and we didn't have to work as hard. He'd let the beagles out, and they would run and change their bark, and the bird dogs, and it was just fun, just walking and spending time talking with my grandpa. Remember one day on the riverbank, I asked him, Grandpa, when did you get saved? When you die, do you know for sure you're going to heaven? He told me about riding the old horse-drawn wagon down to revival meeting when he was younger and got saved in the church that night. I'd never heard that story, but it happened on the riverbank. So anyway, name somebody that taught you something that is worthwhile. Again, people that's made a difference in your life. Think about or name some people who helped you during a difficult time. Who is it that has helped you during a difficult time? Again, some of the same names have been in all three categories. Family, mom and dad. Nobody like having a mom and dad to be there to help you when you're down and out. Have Brother Taylor's name in here. Brother Taylor and I have been times where we just leaned on each other, and so people who helped you in a difficult time. Have a church written down here, and you know there are times that a church just comes together just to be there for you, specifically. And yeah, you see, sometimes we think you got to be big and famous and have a whole bunch of talent and education in order to make a difference. That's not always the case. What about a few people who have taught you something in school and made a difference in your journey through school? I have some teachers written down. Some of them, I have one guy written down who the truth is, he wasn't a very good teacher. We just enjoyed going to class to hear him spout off about sin. Brother Laurent, he'd come in and he'd read out of a book. I don't even know if he studied himself in order to teach the class. He'd just read out of the book. And I thought, why, Brother Laurent, just give us the book and tell us to read it instead of just reading word for word out of the book. But some of the most fun classes when Brother Laurent could care less about the book and he'd get mad about somebody advertising something. We wrote more letters to people saying we're going to boycott them out of Brother Laurent's class than we did any other class. And I look back at that, I said, you know, Brother Laurent taught us to stand against something. I remember the first week I was at Hyles Anderson. I came from Maranatha, as where I went my first year of school. They didn't preach a whole lot on standards. And I had silk flowered shirts and bell-bottom pants and these great little big platform shoes. And I went all year long to Maranatha that way, and nobody tried to teach me that I should wear anything any different. And boy, so I felt like I ought to transfer from Maranatha to Hyles Anderson. I go to Hyles Anderson, and I'm first week in class with Brother Laurent. I'm sitting in there in my silk flowered shirts and tie and no sports jacket or anything. You couldn't find a sports jacket to go to the kind of ties and shirts I had, and bell-bottom pants and platform shoes. And I'm sitting in there. I mean to tell you, Brother Laurent teed off on me. And I remember, man, some of you dress in your, I mean, he didn't pull any punches about it. Yeah, you claim to be a preacher. You ought to get you a white shirt and do away with all your silk flower stuff. And I mean, there's no doubt who he's talking about. And then he says, and wearing all of your big sissy shoes, he said, if I had a chainsaw, I'd come back there and I'd cut the heels off of your shoes right now. Well, you know, I think he was talking about me. And so I remember that. He made a difference. By the way, we all ought to be able to take preaching. I mean, that was direct preaching. My heart was just so big about wanting to do things for the Lord. I'd never had anybody talk to me like that. I didn't know I was supposed to wear a white shirt and a conservative tie and look like a preacher. I hadn't been taught those things yet. So, yeah, he taught me some things. Brother Hyles taught me some things. And so the teachers. A hero. Who's a hero that inspired you? So who are some of the heroes that you had? See, those are the people that have made a difference. Sometimes it might be one of you all that work on the bus route, and we go to teen camp, Brother Josiah, and 3 or 4 of those kids I didn't even know, you know, because they came from junior church. And now here they are. I'm praying through the list for all these young people, and they all did such a good job. You know, so many times when it comes to the bus ministry and some of these other ministries, those kids that ride on the bus, the most important people in their life are that bus captain. One knocks on their door every week, wants to talk to them about the Lord. And so, especially on a day like this, I'm reminded of this truth. All of us can make a difference in the life of somebody else. And some have compassion making a difference. I want to close with this story. It's a little bit more of a serious story. I could connect these two stories, and I looked up different people that told this story. I think the one I like the most is the way that our president, Ronald Reagan, told it in 1984 at the prayer breakfast at the White House. And he told a story that Telemachus, about a man that the way he described it, he says, in shiny armor and distinctive helmets, crowned with ostrich and peacock feathers, the gladiators strode out into the packed arena. Some were carrying swords and others were holding spears or nets, and they were professional warriors, and they would fight to death, all for the purpose of bringing glory to Caesar. And so as he told the story, he told about how all the gladiators would come out, and some of them were slaves, and some of them were criminals. And by the way, other stories said that during these times that it wasn't just gladiators, but sometimes they would let wild beasts out in the middle of the arenas and allow the lions and the different wild beasts tear these people, and to their death. And as our President Reagan expressed it, he said as these gladiators would come out, he called them the combatants, that they would stop and they'd raise their arms and salute, and in one voice they would shout out, "Hail Caesar, those who are about to die, salute thee." And so they would go and they would salute Caesar, and the Colosseums, 80 plus. One said 80,000. Some said there would be as strong as 87,000. But there was a monk who had come to the area by the name of Telemachus. And as he was walking by the Colosseum that day with the crowds, Ronald Reagan said he was kind of caught up into the crowd and found himself into the Colosseum. As he went into the Colosseum, and he saw all of the things that were happening, and as they went into the amphitheater, that he watched as these gladiators would go out and begin to war with each other. President Reagan talked about some of the wars and the battles, how that the bloodthirsty crowds would long for a long battle. They wanted a long battle. But then when one of the gladiators was overpowered by the other, and I've seen this in different times, to where the crowd would begin to give either the thumbs up to let them live, or the thumbs down that they were to die. And Telemachus was in the middle of seeing all of this, and not used to this kind of culture, and so as the story is told, that if they gave the thumbs down, that the overpowering gladiator would literally use his sword and kill the weaker, the overpowered, and then another individual would come out with a club to make sure that the death would literally happen. And again, the crowd would cheer. And so Telemachus, as Ronald Reagan told, I didn't want to read it word for word, but just wanted to give you the basic truth to the story. And so Telemachus saw this, and as another gladiator came out, he jumped over the wall and ran out and got between the two gladiators. And he said, "In the name of Christ, stop." In the name of Christ, stop. He said it twice. But the gladiators turned on him and killed him. But as the history goes, that it was at that time that instead of all of the cheers, that was in 264 BC. For 140 years, this practice was carried about with these gladiators. But it took one individual who went out in the middle of those two gladiators and yelled out to the crowd, in the name of Christ, stop. In the name of Christ, stop. But that statement led him to his death. But it was that day that there was a silence that was in the crowd. And as I read different takes of this story, that it says that they quietly walked out of the Colosseum that day. And it was just 3 days later that it was proclaimed in Rome in 264 BC that there would never again be a battle between gladiators. All because one individual was willing to go out in the middle and take a stand. Cost him his own life, but he said, in the name of Christ, stop. You see, one person can make a difference. And the truth is, you're making a difference in the life of somebody else. A text, a phone call, a kind word, maybe a secret sister. That is a ministry. You ladies, I don't want you to take that lightly. You just may never know how that one kind thought may happen on a day that somebody needs it the most. By the way, you don't have to be a legitimate secret sister in order to be a blessing to somebody else. You could be a help to somebody else, and that may be exactly what they need. One person can make a difference. And to think about it, the overall perspective, you want to know why we're all here tonight underneath the umbrella of the local church? Is because one person made a difference in our life. Jesus laid down his life for each and every one of us, and because of what he did for the world, look at the difference, how one person made a difference. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for loving our family. Let's keep loving each other. Let's keep loving those that are around us. And let's be reminded that you can make a difference in the cause of Christ and in the life of somebody else. You may be the one that will be remembered for years to come. Not the wealthiest people, not the most talented, but because you made a difference in the life of somebody else. Saturday, my wife and I will be going to Alexander, to Anderson, and we're going to be going to let a 90-year-old, sweet, beautiful lady, how much we love her, and to wish her a happy birthday. That was my pastor's wife. And so I have that opportunity of being able to go and to hug her neck, and Wendy and I will be there together. She came to my, was it 40th? Which one was it? 50th? So she came to my 50th birthday and was right here. I have a nice letter. It sits on my desk from Missy Lane just to tell me how much she loves me. And so we'll go Saturday, and I'll hug her wonderful neck, and let her know how much one person made a difference in our life. So keep being that one, okay? And thank God for the one or others who made a difference in your life also, because of some have compassion making a difference. All right, let's have a word of prayer.